All right. This is Eric, and I know you can't see the word here because of the camouflage, but it says Takare on here. And Takare in Japanese means to shine, glimmer, or reflect. So I want to reflect and shine and glimmer some light of Scripture on this lgbtq pastor, at least supporting pastor, as it relates to the red words. Okay, let's talk red words. Here's the refutation here, and I mean this with all due respect. One, by laying out what a sanctioned, intimate physical relationship is, Jesus was excluding all others. And that, once again, is Matthew 19, where he said, "For God created them male and female. For that reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to, cleave to, or be one with his wife. The two shall become one flesh. What God is joined together, let no man bring asunder," okay? Or separate. So in other words, Jesus was trying to explain what marriage is because they had a principal misunderstanding what marriage is and was intended to be. It's the joining of two people and becoming one. And if you're one, then splitting this thing up isn't a good thing. And anyone who's been through a divorce realize parts of you go with her, parts of her come with you, and it's a real mess. So let's go red letter. He kept trying to beat this gentleman over the head with Matthew 23. And speaking of misinterpretation and misinterpretation, when we read the context of these words, and I'm reading out of the New Revised Standard Version, which that is probably the preferred translation of most liberal pastors and scholars and whatnot, is a New Revised Standard Version. I'm reading from that. "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. It is these you ought to practice without neglecting the others. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat but swallow a camel." In other words, Jesus didn't tell them that they were wrong in their tithing practices. He's saying that you are missing the forest from the trees as it relates to justice and mercy and faith. So Jesus was not correcting him predicated upon them doing that. He said, you guys have forgotten the big portion of this, which is, the mercy, the faith, and the love. Okay. Now, Jesus made a statement as it relates to the law. I'm in the 5th chapter of Matthew, and I'm starting with verse 17. And Jesus says thus, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For I truly tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter shall pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven." Okay, so this guy was really huge on context. So let's go context here. Let's go huge on context. When Jewish people in the 1st century were referring to law and prophets, they were referring to the entirety of what we call the Old Testament, what they call the Tanakh. They're referring to the Torah, the law, the 5 books of Moses, along with the rest of Scripture folded in, known as the prophets, which is the rest of the Tanakh. Okay? So Jesus said, I have not come to abolish. He's come to fulfill. So if Jesus were making statements that were against the law, would he not be seeking to break said law or to abolish? No. He said, I have not come to abolish the law. I have come to fulfill it. So let's process that for a couple of moments. So to summarize, 1, the guy did misinterpret Jesus' words in Matthew 23, because he wasn't saying you shouldn't tithe everything, but he's also saying don't forget the big picture about the spirit of the law too, which is love, justice, and mercy, right? And faith, mercy, and justice. So that's the big point. And the other one, of course, is Jesus didn't come to abolish the law. So he's not going to say anything that's going to supersede or unless he said, you've heard it say, do not commit adultery. But I say to you, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has committed adultery with her in his heart. He raised the bar, if anything. So hopefully that provides some explanation. Thank you guys for your indulgence.